Welcome all. My name is Brittany Galati, and I am the Housing Project Coordinator with the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence. I'd like to thank everyone for spending some time with the Sexual Assault Housing Collaborative today for our webinar, Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence Survivor-Centered Housing Programs, an overview of OAESV's housing programs. Before we start, I'd like to go over a few logistical items. As you can see on the screen, today's webinar is supported by an award by the Office on Violence Against Women, the U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this publication are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Justice, Office on Violence Against Women. Before we start, I'd like to go over a few logistics. Spanish interpretation is available today. Please go to the globe icon on your toolbar to select your preferred language. Live captioning is also available. To engage closed captioning, please click on the CC button on your toolbar. We also have ASL interpretation, which will be available throughout today's webinar. Please feel free to use the chat feature to connect with the panelists or elevate any tech issues. We will do our best to find a solution. We do ask that you direct all questions to the Q&A box. This will help ensure questions are not lost in the chat and are addressed by the end of today's webinar. And finally, we will be recording today's webinar and are happy to pass along slides after the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to today's presenter, Jasmine Vera. Jasmine is the Housing and Economic Empowerment Manager with the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence. Jasmine.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules to go over OAESV's survivor-centered housing programs. So today, I'll just kind of provide an overview of our housing programs and how we structure them. So as I dive into this, just want to talk about OAESV, who we are, what we do, in case you are not familiar with us. So OAESV is the statewide sexual violence coalition in Ohio. We do provide training and technical assistance for advocates and preventionists all across the state. So we provide technical assistance to our local programs, systems of advocacy. We do policy work, legal services, and much more. Also, our housing programs. I also included a map of our rape crisis centers that are all across the state of Ohio. So there's like a little pin, and I little pins. Also, please let me know if my connection goes out. I just got a notification right now that the internet was unstable.
Jasmine, this is Dania, the interpreter. We did have a brief connection interruption. Just to clarify, the pins, they represent what again?
Each of our member programs and rape crisis centers throughout the state. So as Brittany mentioned, my name is Jasmine Vera. I'm the Housing and Economic Empowerment Manager at OAESV. And we currently operate and manage 3 different housing programs that we'll dive deep into today. We have a transitional housing program, abbreviation T housing program. And then we also have a meaningful access housing program, and that is a hotel program. And then we also have a rapid rehousing program. So why housing matters. we'll dive into like the intersectionality of housing and sexual violence. Survivors often face housing instability as a direct result of the violence, and then unsafe housing can actually and often have survivors face re-victimization. Survivors of sexual violence often have a lack of available housing resources to them, with either getting into like normal housing assistance programs that are already available through um, other victim assistance programs like domestic violence programs that assist with housing, or just the regular homelessness systems that are in place. Survivors often face economic instability, system inequalities, and then gaps in survivor-specific housing resources for specifically survivors of sexual violence. So what we often see is that survivors are not being screened into housing programs if they don't have like the high lethality as other victimizations, or if it's a survivor who potentially was victimized um, in childhood and they're a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and then are now just coming out and needing assistance or requesting assistance. They're actually often getting underserved or kind of pushed aside. Those reasonings of survivors with like high lethality just being placed on the higher urgent need for housing. So then survivors of sexual violence are kind of put in the back end and not getting services. Oh, apologies. We skipped too many slides. Okay. Our housing philosophy. So the way we set up our housing programs, all of them, is a housing first model. So we don't put any preconditions for survivors to be able to access our housing. We believe housing is a fundamental right, and everybody should have access to safe and stable housing. We also pride ourselves in having survivor-centered housing, so allowing survivors to guide their own healing and housing journey. Along with that, the voluntary services and the trauma-informed empowerment focus. So those all kind of go hand in hand together. Um, the participation in our supportive services is not required for housing, so we would never make somebody have to participate in services that they do not feel comfortable participating in or do not want to participate in. We leave it up to the survivor to be able to choose what they feel fits best for them. So along with voluntary services, we also want to create a space that is non-judgmental and culturally responsive. So with this, our housing approach, all of our housing programs, we want to make sure that it reflects all of the following. So safety, trust, and transparency. Safety means something totally different for each individual, each family, each household. Um, in order to build safety, trust must be established. And in order to establish trust, we believe you also have to be transparent. So in all of our housing programs, we are transparent with all those we serve to make sure that we are clear with them and all of our programs as to what our limitations may or may not be. Um, our housing programs are also depending on what our funding might be available. So at times there might be some limitations. And we obviously want to be transparent with those who we are providing our services to right up front. So that way there is no miscommunication or then them feel like something was not put up like transparent, so that way everybody can make an informed decision of if our housing programs are right for them. With that, empowerment and choice. All of our programs, we want to make sure that we are empowering those who we are serving and allowing them the choice. So we make sure that they are well aware of what each program entails, what the options are, and the limitations, and to see what fits best for each individual. And with that is cultural humility as well. Safety and housing looks very different for each person, and sometimes culture and background also have a lot to play in someone's housing, and we recognize that and want to make sure we are responsive to that as well. So, actually getting into our housing programs now. Our Meaningful Access Housing Program, abbreviation MAHP, um, is a hotel program. So the purpose of this program is to provide short-term immediate assistance. So it bridges the housing gap for survivors. So an overview of the program is that it would provide a hotel stay on average for 5 to 7 nights. We do provide extensions based on like the need and our available funding as well. So in order to access this program or really any of our housing programs, we are working hand in hand with our member programs and the local rape crisis center advocates at our member programs to basically access and utilize all our programs. The way this program works is that a local member program advocate or rape crisis center would basically submit the application on the survivor's behalf. We also want to make it very low barrier. So the application is only 2 pages long, and the only eligibility requirement for them to be able to access the program is this a survivor of sexual violence? Yes or no? If it's a yes, they would be eligible for the program. So we are able to do either a direct booking or a reimbursement for this program. So we are able to process direct bookings and do it on behalf of the program and the survivor if it's during a time that a program sends the request over to us and we are doing processing, like program processing hours. And in those cases, we usually will do it same day booking. We also give the option of reimbursement. So we are not a 24-hour agency. So if a request is needed after hours on the holidays, or if it is needed at a hotel location that maybe we don't have access to book through, we also give all of our member programs the option to basically book on their own and then request reimbursement. And then we would basically reimburse them for the stay. So the impact that we've seen this have, we've seen that 96.7, the statistics are on the screen, reported that they would have not had any safe housing option had this program not been available. And then 86% of participants that utilized the program said that the hotel stay did meet their needs. We recently also did an evaluation report that basically assessed the efficiency of this model and this specific housing program. It is up on our website now if you would like to look at the report. And I will also drop it in the chat at the end of this as well. Our transitional housing program. So our transitional housing program is basically a long-term rental assistance model. As the statewide coalition, we adapted a scattered site model. So basically, this program will provide 24 months of rental support with some utility assistance, and the survivors would select their own housing anywhere in the state of Ohio. So they would work with either a private landlord or a property management company, and we basically provide that rental assistance on their behalf. The access is very similar to how our hotel program is. The referrals are received statewide from our local member programs. This program is also survivor-led and focused. So we would work hand in hand with the referring agency and the survivor, and the survivor would kind of lead the search for what they preferred as in housing. So it could be basically anywhere throughout the state of Ohio. We have received referrals from like Central Ohio, and they are working with the survivor that potentially wants to relocate to Southeast or Southwest Ohio, and we have been able to make that possible for them. This program has a lot of collaboration. We are working with our local programs, local landlords, and our collaboration to make sure that we have a successful outcome for the survivor, basically. The outcomes and voices that have come out of this was that it increased safety and stability and improved mental health. This program is really ideal because it provides a full 24 months, so it really allows survivors the chance to basically get back on their feet and have something stable once the program is totally over. And then our rapid rehousing program. So the purpose of this program is to provide stability through rental assistance, similar to our transitional housing program. This program is a little bit different though, however, because it will only provide a maximum of 12 months of rental support with some utility assistance. This one, similar to our transitional housing program, the survivor would also select their own housing. One of the main differences of this one versus our transitional housing program, even though this program is shorter, this program also allows a survivor to maintain their current housing. So if it is a survivor who is safe in their current housing and it is not in a need, does not need to relocate to a separate like location or separate housing, we can actually assist them if they are just having trouble maintaining their current housing situations. So we have seen the need for this come up when a survivor potentially loses their job due to a history of sexual violence or being impacted by sexual violence, and they have lost their job or have had to leave a job from the impacts of violence and not having the funds to maintain housing. So this program gives us the opportunity to assist survivors in maintaining their current housing. So we are able to assist survivors with back rent and also current rent on a shorter scale. So it really is on a case by case basis, but it would basically allow a survivor to maintain staying housed. Access, similar, well, basically the same as our other two programs. Referrals are also received statewide, and like all of our other housing programs, they are survivor-led and focused. So we work collaboratively with the survivor, but also with our member programs on finding the best housing solution for that specific survivor. So, partnerships that make it work. As you might have seen or heard, we work very hands-on with our referring agencies, our member programs. And that is because we have to acknowledge the strength of our partners. We cannot do this work alone. I could not do this work alone. So if you are interested in kind of establishing a housing program, or maybe you already have one, but you're facing like a lot of barriers, a lot of issues, one thing I would highly encourage is collaboration. A lot of collaboration. That being with your local community agencies, that looks different for everybody really. So it really depends on what your goals and your missions basically are, but for ours specifically, we collaborate a lot with our local rape crisis centers, our member programs, and our partner organizations. We also have legal services at OESV, so we work hand in hand with our legal team. So that might look different for you depending on the circumstances, but it's basically getting your community together or knowing who you need to basically team up with, because we cannot do this work in silos. We do have to work collaboratively with everyone. Now, our programs sound all good and dandy, but there obviously are some challenges and needs. And I do want to take the time to recognize those. One big thing is funding. So I do want to acknowledge that funding could be a reason why, and is a reason why there are many housing challenges, barriers and stigma that come with serving survivors, but also with survivors coming forward to ask for assistance and help. And then also specifically housing access for survivors of sexual violence. As I mentioned before, we see that survivors specifically of sexual violence are kind of being put to the side due to lack of high lethality, due to it maybe being an event that happened within a certain time frame that is not then kind of pinpointed to being an urgent need. And I just want to call that out, that we want to minimize the barriers for survivors specifically. So as long as a survivor comes to us and says they are a survivor of sexual violence, our mission is to serve them. Okay, and looking ahead of what we continue to do and strive with housing. So specifically for OESV, we will continue to provide training and technical assistance just because we want to provide consistency and capacity building across Ohio. So we continue providing ongoing technical assistance to our member programs to make sure that they are basically all serving survivors in the same equitable way. Those were all my slides because I did leave time for questions. So I would like to take the time if there are any questions about any specific program or overview.